Hello and welcome to the SciPhi show. Today we are going to be discussing a topic that seems to come up a lot on the internet, and it's how belief can be this incredibly dirty word. And it's one of those unfortunate conversations that seems to just go round and round and round with a lot of insults thrown out instead of any decent conversation being had. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. Hopefully you'll join us for the show. So hello and welcome to the SciPhi show. I'm Joe.
And I'm Dave.
And you might have noticed things look a little bit different tonight.
I'm glad I didn't do any drugs before coming on.
Decided to mess around with things and see how it all goes. So yes, there's a new layout. We decided to try a new feature from Streamlabs, which is the ability to have someone load a camera in directly rather than using some form of messaging service or web-based service to bring the cameras in together. And we thought, you know what, why not? Let's crack out the fake green screens that we used on our videos before and have us like there and allow the background to come through. I've also been playing around and found a new feature where nice little pop up there, so you can see go watch Andor's come from Icarus. I have watched 3 or 4 episodes of it, I think, and it's been really, really, really good. I'm more up to date with that than I am on Lord of the Rings. I'm also up to date with She-Hulk, apart from tonight's episode, I think. Lots of good stuff on at the moment. So yes, and I've also changed the format of the chat that appears at the top as well, just for now. Just trying out a few different design type things just to see how it goes. So there you go, lots of different stuff going on. Hopefully you will enjoy them and there won't be too many bugs, but you know what it's like. What's a sci-fi show without a ton of bugs? That's what seems to happen. And let us know what you think all the way along. Because I'm eager to find out what your thoughts are on these sorts of things as well. And yes, Icarus, the Lord of the Rings, I have been enjoying it, but you're right. The reason it's gone to the bottom of the pile of all the new things is because it's not as good as them, frankly, and I don't have the time for things that aren't quite as good as other things. But yeah, there you go. So you're not really here to hear me go on about the new features, and you're not here to hear us talk about, latest TV. I'm sure pretty much all the people that we have here are interested in most of the same TV shows and have probably watched more than me anyway. So there we go. Tonight we're going to be discussing belief and how it's not just a dirty word. You might have seen in the image and the description a lot of people saying things like, I don't believe in evolution, I accept the facts, I don't have any scientific beliefs, science is a method, blah, blah, blah. I don't have any beliefs, full stop. All those sorts of claims. So when it comes to the word belief, we see a lot of our fellow skeptics and atheists see this as a dirty word. And the question for tonight is it really something to be avoided at all costs? Is it really a dirty word? So Dave, what do you think?
No, it's not a dirty word. It's a pretty general, normal, everyday kind of word, and that has many, many uses just in everyday conversation. I can understand people who've just left religion wanting to avoid the word because they might associate it with the religion they just came out of. But in general, there's nothing wrong with the word belief. There seems to be this thing, like a popular saying is, science doesn't care about beliefs, or science doesn't involve beliefs. And you get these skeptics who are trying to appear super skeptical. And so they take that as meaning, well, if I want to show that I'm scientific, I need to avoid beliefs because beliefs and science don't go together. When in actual fact, belief and science do kind of go together.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you didn't believe the scientific method was the best method of investigation, you wouldn't use it, surely. But
exactly.
Let's backtrack a little bit and let's just go through what a belief actually is, Dave.
Okay, so a belief in general is just any proposition that we affirm or think is likely. Some people might say, well, it's a psychological state. And yes, that's kind of true as well. One thing can be made up of multiple parts. But generally, if you say, I believe the sun will rise tomorrow, what you're saying is, I think it is true that the sun will rise tomorrow. You're not making a claim of knowledge. And even in a lot of circumstances where you just say, the sun will rise tomorrow, you're not making a knowledge claim. You're just expressing an opinion or a belief.
Yeah,
Even though lots of atheists try to say that unless you preface it with "I believe," you're making a knowledge claim.
Yeah, I mean that is something that comes up quite often. The fact that if you're making this statement, I had a conversation like that very, very recently, and then I said, okay, well, if I'm making this statement, I'm not, I'm not making a belief. And I gave tons of different examples, and there was always an excuse as to why. It didn't apply in this circumstance. Oh, but this. Is like, okay, but you can see a number of circumstances that it doesn't apply to, which means that there is a chance that it doesn't apply to this one. No, but it does. But why? Because that's what it is. It's like, well, it's not. If I say God doesn't exist, I'm not necessarily making a truth or a knowledge claim past that of my psychological state of what I believe. It's one of those things that... Sorry.
I was just going to say, one way of looking at it is, why is it the case that when you say God doesn't exist, you're making a knowledge claim? Because unless something's prefaced with belief, I believe, it's a knowledge claim. Well, why isn't it the case that unless something is prefaced by I know, it's a knowledge claim?
Exactly. I mean, no, I think it's a thing. I think it's an issue with language and the lack of clarity of language. I do think it would be better if in both circumstances people were clearer and they were to either say I know or I believe. And it's why I try to always say I believe gods don't exist, in the hope that it doesn't get taken the wrong way. It's just it's unclear, isn't it? It's unclear. So the point there is to actually ask the question, what do you mean by that? That's all it takes. And if someone says, well, yeah, it's ridiculous to think that they clearly don't exist. And all of a sudden they start coming out with a slightly more definitive language. And you go, okay, so are you actually saying that gods do not exist? They definitely don't exist. They don't exist. You ask the question. But yeah, it's better to be clearer with the language. So what you gave one definition there, which was basically a proposition that we hold true or accept to be true or affirm true. affirm to be true or affirm, or the inverse, I guess. You affirm to be false. So you believe it false. You're accepting the inverse proposition.
Yeah, but that's in the case of something like that, what you're affirming is the opposite proposition. Yes.
Yeah.
And because both propositions make up one entire kind of statement, that's,
So I think another couple of ways that you could actually put this is taking it out of perhaps some of the more technical language and making it more simplistic. Is something you think is true, something you think likely or probable. When you come to a conclusion and you hold that conclusion as something that is the case, you're believing that conclusion. When you might also have knowledge by making that conclusion, but anything that you accept to be true or think likely, or most probable, more probable than not, that is holding a belief. And that's all that it is. That is all that it is. You already mentioned a problem there about, a statement that can sometimes be taken as a knowledge or truth claim instead of a belief. I actually had one, I think it was yesterday, where someone said that a belief is a knowledge claim.
I mean, I guess if you want to get really technical, a knowledge claim is a belief.
Yes.
It's just a particular standard of belief, but it's not the other way around.
Yeah, no, it's not the other way around. So knowledge is a subset of belief. So if you claim knowledge, you believe you have knowledge, and you hold this thing to be true, you believe it to be true, and you think you've got enough justification for it to be considered knowledge. Yeah, that's fair enough. I'd agree with that. But the idea that if you believe something, you're making a knowledge claim, it was just, and the justification for it was ridiculous. So that's another problem with it. There is this, I think it's the reason, part of the reason for that whole Gnostic-agnostic graph being ridiculous as well. The whole atheist, theist, Gnostic, agnostic quadrant that we all, I know some people like it. We tend to strongly dislike it on this channel because it's quite weak epistemically. But we often say that, for atheists like us, we don't really fit anywhere on that graph unless you alter what that graph is actually saying. And that is in part the problem. And now some say, no, you are, because I've often been told I'm a Gnostic atheist. And I say, but I don't have knowledge. I don't know no gods exist. I believe gods don't exist. There might be some that I know based on how they're claimed to not exist. But I don't know no gods exist. I don't even know that person has got their claim wrong and it's not based on a different god. So this confusion between belief and knowledge is another part of the confusion of this whole conversation. But equally, it makes it more confusing because if people don't believe they know, but a belief is a knowledge claim, right? It's all sort of, I don't know. So that's another problem. So there you go. There's a couple of problems with the conversations around belief. Hey, Cyborg, how you doing? And there is a couple of additional issues there as well. So we've defined belief in a number of different ways. So just to recap, a positive attitude towards a proposition, affirming a proposition, accepting something is true, concluding something is the case. That is all it is. And sometimes you get claims like a belief is always irrational, don't you, Dave?
Sorry, say that again. It kind of cut out.
Sometimes you get a claim like a belief is always irrational.
Yeah. I've heard that claim a lot, and it's absolutely false, because it's not belief that's irrational. It's irrational beliefs. Yeah, so you can have a rational belief. I've run out of milk. I'm going up to the co-op, and I need to get milk. Now, it seems rational to believe that there's going to be milk in the co-op because they sell it. But sometimes they run out. So you can't absolutely know that there's going to be milk there, especially if you say you only drink semi-skimmed and you won't drink full fat and you won't drink full skimmed. So, they could run out. So you can't know. So all you have is belief. And it's a rational belief, but if you were to say, okay, I'm going to go to my local Chinese takeaway because I need toilet paper, that belief seems a little less rational, doesn't it? Because
well, I mean,
Chinese
do they have a toilet?
No.
Nah. Is it just a takeaway?
It's just a takeaway.
Okay,
yeah.
no, there you go. I was imagining a restaurant attached to the side. There you go.
Yeah, see,
I formed an opinion with incomplete information. That was abductive reasoning for you right there.
Your local takeaway might have a restaurant attached, but I live in the ass end of North Wales. We're lucky we have a takeaway and a co-op. But yeah, so beliefs themselves, we form them every day. I mean, when we go to bed at night, we can't know that we're going to wake up tomorrow. Seems pretty likely we're going to wake up tomorrow, especially if we're in reasonable condition. But you can't know, and especially if you're going to argue for something like empiricism, the only way you can actually know anything is if you have scientific evidence to show it. Well, how many people go through a scientific medical every time they go to bed? But it seems rational to believe that you're going to wake up if you're in reasonably good health. So belief isn't irrational. It's the chain of reasoning that leads up to the belief that makes it rational or irrational.
Yes, so this is something we've discussed a number of times before. It's the conversation around rationality, and we've got a number of videos on it. But Dave, why don't you just give your quick sort of one-liner of what rationality is?
Rationality is reasoning according to the rules of logic, and kind of using good probability theories and that kind of thing.
So, I mean, you don't necessarily have to know all of the rules of logic, all the different types of logic or anything like that. It's just sort of being in line with them, not making contradictory statements, for example.
Somebody like David Papineau would argue that a monkey is rational, even though they don't use the rules of logic. And probability theory, if they're hungry and they go to a tree where they know that there's a banana, they get the banana, they eat the banana. They're being rational. We can assess them according to the rules of logic, even if they can't do it themselves.
Yeah, that's fair. Good way to put it. And I suppose, by not making those contradictory statements, it would entail, not holding contradictory beliefs. And I suppose not holding beliefs in the face of strong evidence, whatever that evidence may be. So, arguably, there's quite a few things that are entailed by this reasoning to the rules of logic and probability theory. I think even if you don't know them, it's generally quite obvious when someone is being completely irrational. There can be times when someone appears to be rational in their belief, but isn't. But for all intents and purposes, the the problem is many people think all beliefs are irrational, but the rationality component comes from the reasoning. And if someone believes all beliefs are irrational, they probably haven't reasoned properly and they're holding an irrational belief.
That's it. And I think a lot of people, it kind of shows you how it's not belief that's irrational, it's the beliefs. Many skeptics argue that belief in God isn't rational because it's a belief, therefore it's not rational. But they'll also argue that they are rational. They're skeptics, therefore they are rational. Well, that's not reasoning according to the rules of logic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a belief because they can't know that they're rational without taking some kind of test. And if that's their reasoning, then it's obviously not going to pass the test because just being a skeptic doesn't mean you're rational. Skeptic isn't a synonym of rational.
No, definitely. I mean, you'd hope that someone who was applying good skepticism was rational. Very much hope so. But yes, I think that's another thing. There's this aesthetic with words like skeptic and atheist, isn't it? And it's just, well, I there you go. All atheists are rational.
Hashtag critical thinker, therefore I'm a critical thinker.
Which sort of goes against it. In fact, Lone Wolf said something similar in the chat I've just seen. People who say belief is a dirty word are irrational. I think generally you're right there. Or at least see it as a dirty word. You know, they don't necessarily say it is a dirty word, but it puts a bitter taste in their mouth. And as Dave mentioned earlier, you can sort of understand if you have been in the thrall of religion for a very long time, and you feel abused. You know, it's been a traumatic experience, especially coming out of it and suddenly having to reassess everything in your life, and you're angry and you don't want to be attributed or what's the word I'm looking for, seen in accordance with anything to do with religion. So you try and avoid all language that you see as religious, and one of those things happens to be belief. So you don't want to go along with any word that is belief. I don't believe, I accept. You can sort of understand where they're coming from. They want to separate themselves from the language. The problem, though, is they're allowing their trauma to still have control over them. Rather than accepting belief is just a word, it isn't a religious thing, it applies everywhere. They're allowing their past trauma to actually control them and make them make irrational statements like, I don't have any beliefs, or I don't believe, I accept.
Yeah, that's kind of a popular one. It kind of reminds me of a popular one. I don't believe evolution. I accept it as the best explanation. And if a belief is just something that we accept as most likely true, then you are believing evolution. I mean, even Richard Dawkins says only the uneducated would claim to not believe in evolution. So if Richard Dawkins and other scientists can use language like belief, why can't the average skeptic and atheist?
Yeah. I don't know. Again, I think it is this trying to move away from the religious language. I think that there is this big fight against something, so much so that it's causing one to be irrational, because it's an emotional argument. It's coming from a point of emotion, isn't it? It's rather than well thought out. It is, no, I'm going to do everything I can to separate myself from this, so therefore.
And see, I think places like the ACA kind of do a little bit of harm here as well. or those kind of places. Not specifically the ACA, but any of those kind of atheists and skeptics. In that they push people to leave their religion. They know that people go through this phase of being angry. And rather than play on that deconstruction and help them through that, help them get through that anger, they stoke that anger because they want them to be angry and join the fight.
Mm.
And so they keep pushing this idea that belief is bad because they know it keeps them in that space. When really what needs to be happening is people who are suffering from religious trauma need actual help. They don't need to be weaponized. They need to be helped. And so I can understand this need to separate themselves from the word belief. But what should be happening is people should be helping them to take that word back, to realize that it's not such a bad word, and believing things isn't so bad. It's not having a belief, it's what you believe and why you believe them that make things rational or irrational.
Most definitely. I mean, I think that in itself, that the why you believe it, that in itself is probably more important in a lot of cases than what you believe specifically. Because if you're not doing any harm with your belief, then the only thing is, well, make sure that you're justified in holding this belief. I mean, you'd want someone to be justified anyway if they care about rationality, they care about being a rational being, they want to present themselves as rational. It's the reasoning. I suppose if you're not harming anyone and you don't care about rationality, then okay, go have fun being irrational. But I think we should encourage critical thought and rational thinkers. Personally, I think there is a certain harm in not encouraging those behaviors. Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to run up the chat.
Yeah, go for it.
So Kimo says it's going to be hard to avoid talking about the ethics of belief. Yes. I mean, we could just ignore it. Mark, yes, I have every day, but it wears off about 8 o'clock. So, yeah. Wolf says, well, if they believe all beliefs are irrational, it would seem they are projecting their own understanding of their own irrational position and misassigning it to reality as a whole. Yes, but they'll say that they don't believe that. They accept it. And you go, you don't believe it, so why do you accept it? And they'll go on saying, oh, you're just playing word games. No, I'm just using the word based on pretty much all of its meanings in every dictionary, in every language, in every, apart from your little private language who has decided a belief is something else. Kimo says, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who would say they're a non-critical thinker. Don't make it so. That's true. I don't think anybody would say they're a non-critical thinker. I think everybody thinks I'd say most people think that they're at least not irrational. I think there are some people who would say that they don't care enough to think about things in an overly complex way, especially around topics they don't care about so much. So they're happy to be not engage critical thinking in certain areas. There's certain things that, for example, my wife doesn't care about so much. So she's just like, if there's no harm coming out of it, I don't really care what the answer is, so I'm not going to think about it. She's you could say the same thing about an atheist, perhaps. They don't care enough about the proposition of God's existence to consider it, so they're not engaging their critical thinking there. They just don't care. So I think you're not necessarily hard-pressed to find someone to say that they don't always engage critical thinking in topics, especially ones they don't think about. But I think of matters of import, I think everybody thinks they are thinking critically. And often those who are not thinking the best are the most confident.
Yeah, ignorance tends to add to people's confidence, unfortunately.
Don't know why.
I'm ignorant of the topic, so I know everything about it.
It's the less you know about the topic, the smaller you think the topic actually is, and you think you know everything about it. We used to have that same sort of problem at work all the time. People who thought they knew how to use, I don't know, Excel really well, and that was because I could do a VLOOKUP. I could do a pivot chart. You're like, right. Is that the limit of your skill? What do you mean? That's advanced Excel. Just because some website told you that doesn't actually mean that's the case. Lone Wolf says, all conspiracy theorists are skeptics, but I don't think all skeptics would want to be compared to conspiracy theorists. See, this is interesting. I mean, are they actually skeptics, or are they just skeptical in the modern doubt sense of the word? Are they applying good skepticism enough to actually be considered skeptics?
You could probably say they're applying a form of radical skepticism. In other words, they're doubting something that's pretty much kind of common knowledge, and like, it's, do you really have hands? Well, yeah. Can't actually see them because of the green screen, but I'm holding hands up. Yeah, you know the question.
Yeah.
How do I know I have hands? Well,
yeah, you hold them in front of your face.
Yeah, but you could go into radicals. Well, what if you're a brain in a vat? What if none of this is real? What if it's all electrical impulses controlled by an evil scientist? And that's kind of what conspiracy theorists are doing. They're doubting the common narrative. But they're doing so irrationally. Like, I mean, especially if you go into flat Earth, you're doubting something that's so well attested to, you're being irrational. You're doubting for the sake of doubting and to make yourself look superior and like a deeper thinker and like a proper skeptic, when that's not how skepticism is supposed to be applied.
So, Outdone Tyler, how you doing, buddy? He says, in their defense, colloquially, we typically don't state that we believe something unless we are indicating a level of uncertainty. What do you mean? I mean, I'm trying to work out exactly what you're inferring, what you're implying there, what I'm supposed to infer from that. Because I can be completely certain about a belief and not have knowledge. I can be a bit more uncertain and still believe it. I could, in certain circumstances, have epistemic certainty but be uncertain. So, yeah. Come back to me on that one and explain exactly what you mean, and then I'll pick that up again. Sorry for not understanding that one, Tyler. Icarus says, I don't believe that all beliefs are irrational because I don't have any beliefs. Do you just accept it, Icarus? Mark has a very good point. Overthinking leads to doubt and hesitation. I would say that's very, very true. That's also the case of the more you know about a topic as well, the more you realize you don't know. And therefore, you will start to feel a little bit more uncertain in your position as well. And someone who has limited knowledge will come in being a lot more confident than you. And, you know, you might then go, oh, well, they seem confident. Maybe they're Other people who know as little as them definitely will think they are because of the confidence they're exuding. Icarus says he doesn't reckon conspiracy theorists are skeptics because they don't doubt their own conspiracies. That's one way to put it.
But then a lot of skeptics don't doubt their own positions to begin with. There's a good thing from Massimo Pigliucci on YouTube, and he's kind of giving a speech or discussion on skepticism, and he brings up all these things, and there's all these people who call themselves skeptics agreeing with certain statements, like this person claims to have been abducted by a UFO. Hands up who thinks he's crazy. And all these skeptics put their hands up. And then he goes, well, what evidence do you have to show that there is no UFOs? We can doubt their claim, but can we ever truly say that there is no way they could have been abducted by one? You're kind of overreaching with your skepticism here. So a lot of people who consider themselves to be skeptics hold positions that they're not very skeptical of.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you see it all the time on online, especially with people who claim evidence will change their mind. And you show them some evidence of something, maybe like the definition of belief, perhaps, and it doesn't change their mind. And you go, I know you believe that evidence will change your mind, but I mean, I've got evidence right here that it doesn't.
I mean, there's a bunch of scientific studies that show that people's minds aren't generally changed by evidence. They're changed by the rhetoric that goes along with the evidence.
Most definitely. That's why charismatic leaders or people who are saying most of the things you want them to say or what you agree with already are going to get you on side and get you believing the other bits more than someone with all the facts. If it was truly facts and evidence that changed people's mind, we wouldn't have people arguing that the earth was flat. Bible says, the funny thing is, those that say they don't have beliefs are often those parroting Dillahunty stuff. He also says that he wants to believe as many true things as possible. He does, actually, which is interesting. I don't know if there was a point in the past where he used to say that he doesn't hold beliefs. I know that he and Aaron Ra have said things like, I don't want to believe, I want to know. So maybe they got from that. But I know Dillahunty has also said, knowledge is a subset of belief. I've even had a conversation on Twitter where he has said that. So he even has this kind of understanding of this topic. And a lot of the people who are fired up and following a lot of the other rhetoric and make these comments like, I don't believe. Yeah.
I mean, for the whole thing, I don't want to believe, I want to know. I mean, it definitely sounds off, but you could take a really charitable reading and insert I don't just want to believe, I want to know. Yeah. And that sort of fixes the statement a little.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
But a lot of them do say, I don't want to believe, I want to know, because many of them also say that beliefs and knowledge are not interrelated.
Yeah.
You either believe or you know.
Yeah. But that's the thing. You don't stop believing once you have knowledge. Why would you? I mean, I know I'm a human. I still hold the belief I'm human. I don't need to say I believe and I know I'm human. It's just entailed by the fact that I have knowledge that I'm human. If I didn't believe I was human, then I clearly couldn't have knowledge I was human, surely. And what would I believe I was? If I don't believe I'm human, what do I, that I'm a turnip? And Outdone has come back. That comment from earlier says, if someone asks you the question and you say, I believe, and then state your answer, it's implied that they are answering with some uncertainty. I suppose it could be.
Or just less certainty.
Yeah. I would say that generally it's less certainty than someone claiming knowledge for certain. Yeah, cool. Thank you for clarifying that for me. So Command Cyborg. I feel like the Christian proclaiming I believe in God means something else than if I say I believe in evolution is a thing. So this is an interesting one. It's one that I have had a conversation with a few in the past. It's cut off the chat slightly there, or his comment. I'll sort that out later. So, when you believe in something, it's saying you have trust or confidence in it. So, if I say that I believe in evolution, I have confidence in the science. I believe in the work that's been done on evolution. I have confidence that evolution is the fact that it's supposed to be. There's plenty of ways you can do it, but believe in and believe are quite synonymous. They can have slightly different things, but it is, I believe in my friends, whether that's because I'm thinking, I've got confidence in them to go and get the job that they're after or something like that. In those circumstances, is that the same as I believe in God? It's similar, because when they're saying I believe in God, they're saying something like they believe in God to be doing all the good things and to be there for them and doing all the things a God ought to do as the ruler of everything. At least that's the way I see it. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, I see it in a very similar way. I mean, if I say I believe in evolution, it means I believe evolution exists, and I believe that the processes that it's decreed to have, the ongoing processes and the genetic things and everything like that, I believe that they function in that way. Same as saying something like I believe in vaccines. I'm saying I believe they exist, and I believe they do the job that they're intended to do.
You have confidence in their efficacy. I have confidence,
yeah. So, and it's kind of the same with God, except you could argue and say, well, we have evidence for evolution, we have evidence for the efficacy of vaccines, so I've got good reason to believe in them. With God, not so much. There's all these arguments that don't seem particularly convincing, which is why I don't believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
But the believe in thing is, yes, there are differences, but it's not differences in the wording or what the wording means. It's differences in why we should apply our belief in those things.
Most definitely. And again, it comes back to, as you said, the reasoning. And this is the problem. It's not the belief itself. It's the reasoning to get to that belief and maintain that belief. And even if that belief is based on some pretty solid reasoning, the ability to turn around and go, well, let me think about that again, because you've actually presented something I haven't heard before. Or I have heard this before, but not in this way. I'm going to reassess my position. And that's hard to do, and it can be exhausting. So obviously, if it's important, that's when you should really be constantly reassessing yourself. It's, I'd say, near on impossible to be a good skeptic in every moment, in every single thing in your life. There are some things, it's just not pragmatic, right? There are some things you just have to take. You're approaching a bridge. Do you know what? Just apply some inductive reasoning or don't even think about it at all. I'm in a car, I'm going over the bridge. It's fine. Because if you were to actually assess that bridge for its structure and everything, just to make sure it was safe enough for you to cross over every single time, you'd never go anywhere. You
Yeah,
could.
I mean, sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say you could make an argument that it can be irrational to be too skeptical in everyday sort of mundane things like that.
That's why I believe in virtue epistemology and virtue skepticism, because you can be. There are vices. There's being too incredulous, or credulous, I guess. There's being too skeptical. Your friend says, "Oh, I went to a great restaurant last night, had a great hamburger," and you say, "Well, can I see the receipt? Did you take any photos? Where's the video? Have you got CCTV?" You're not being a good skeptic. You're
being a dick.
Being a bad skeptic. Yeah, you're being a particularly bad skeptic. But if that same friend said, "Oh, I've got a horse in my backpack," you said, "Oh, cool." You're being a bad skeptic again. Because, yes, you can trust your friend, but maybe not that much.
Yeah.
Unless, he's like 12 feet tall and he has 4 horse legs hanging out of his backpack. But yeah, it is possible to be too skeptical. It is possible to have skepticism as a vice.
Definitely. I don't know if I said hello to Reason to Doubt when they came in, but hey guys, good to have you here. I can't wait to have you on the stream with us next Thursday. And Claire, I've just seen you popped in as well. Thank you very much for joining us as well. Awesome. Mark mentions that many minds are changed by following the crowd and fitting in. I think that is incredibly accurate, Mark. It's annoyingly so, if I'm honest. I wish it wasn't that accurate. I really do. But you're very, very, very right there. Peer pressure. We're tribal creatures as it is, and we don't want to be out of the crowd. I think that's why you find that there are many atheists that have become quite dogmatic in their views of certain things. And they will parrot information from others because they start to contest that. You look at the number of times when Dave and I have said that morality can be objective, or that a belief is just something that you accept as true. There's nothing wrong with holding a belief, or one of the definitions of atheism is the belief gods don't exist, and that's the definition we hold to. And we get othered and called theists and told that we're irrational and this and that because we're not following the crowd. And you can see how this applies elsewhere. You can imagine, do you remember school? And there were different groups around there, and there were certain behaviors, certain ways people had to dress to be in different groups, and music you had to listen to, and but the bulk of people, they don't want to think too hard about things. They want to fit in. They want a big group. They want the safety. They want the security. And so if everyone else around them is saying a certain thing, well, they'll say a certain thing too. Sorry, the chat just jumped down then. I was scrolling through nice and slowly. Reason to Doubt this apparently still catching up, but literally had someone tell me today that believing something means you need to be able to prove it's true.
Was it a guy called the Militant Agnostic by any chance?
It might not be, but yeah, he is one that is likely to say that.
But yeah.
No, there's a few people that have done that. I've had that one a number of times, but that isn't the case. But the reason they say that is because then they'd have to accept that there are theists out there that don't claim knowledge, that just believe God exists, and their whole prove it, prove it, prove it rhetoric is irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to, like I said, about the co-op and the Chinese takeaway. if us believing something means that we have to prove it is true, otherwise we shouldn't believe it, we would never get a bus, we would never get a train, we would never go to the cinema, because, well, unless we can prove that a film starts at 8:30, then we shouldn't believe that film is starting at 8:30. And the only way to prove it would be to go to the cinema. So why are you going to the cinema if you don't believe that the film is going to start at 8:30? Why not just show up at 9? Because, you know.
Yes, you could go onto plenty of little worlds there and get ever more ridiculous, couldn't you, Dave?
Yeah, you can. You can make like some super, really absurd reductions with that one.
Yeah.
Like, why believe you're going to fall asleep? Because you can't actually prove you're going to fall asleep. And once you've fallen asleep, you can't actually prove you're asleep. And when you wake up, you might not have been asleep. You might have passed out. So why believe that you ever fall asleep?
Yeah. Could you imagine if there were people without some form of brain damage who actually operated in that way? Like
me. I'm that rational. I'm that much of an empiricist. I don't accept anything. I've been awake for 333 days in a row because I can't prove I'm going to fall asleep. And the fact that I'm still up is pretty good evidence that I can't fall asleep.
Also, just like to say hello to the Trusty 8 podcast and Crisis, who have just entered recently. Thank you for joining us. Hope you guys are well. So, carrying on with the chat. Icarus says, I don't think the phrases I believe in God versus I believe in evolution are inherently different. The reasons for the belief are different, of course. Yes, I think that's much the same as us. There's not a massive difference between like it generally means the same thing. It's just the fact that, you know, evolution has a lot of scientific evidence to back it up. So you could make an argument, especially on scientific grounding, that it's a lot more well-supported position. But you could still have someone who was rational in their belief in God. And I'm saying this as someone who believes no gods exist. I think it's possible for a theist to be rational. So by saying we believe something, we inherently leave some wiggle room for the belief to be in the overall picture, but some details may be off. That's a really good point. And actually, you've just made me think of another issue with the whole belief thing. So there are people out there, again, this is coming back to the whole agnostic atheist thing. They say, no, I only lack belief and I don't claim knowledge because that means that I'm open to change my mind. And well, actually, I believe things and I'm still open to change my mind. There are some things that I've believed incredibly strongly and I have changed my mind on. Some of them you've probably seen happen on these streams through these conversations. Or if it hasn't happened in that conversation, I've then thought about it and written an article about how I've changed my position on this thing because of the conversation that I had on the stream, and I've had some time to digest it. There's been plenty of things that I was quite certain about. I used to be very certain that morality was subjective, you know, but conversation with Dave, I changed my mind.
These are the dangers of knowing me. Just ask Luke, too, and ask him about Laplace's demon.
But yes, I think that's a good point. There's nothing wrong with belief, and actually people who think the second you say you believe means you're absolutely certain and you're not going to change your mind, again, aren't really applying particularly good skepticism, are they? So Lone Wolf says belief can be easily understood with the phrase reasoned confidence. If a person believes a thing, they think they have a good reason to believe the thing, unless they're me. I'm just different. I think that they probably do think that they have a good reason to believe the thing. they might not even question it. They might actually just think, well, I believe this, so I've probably got a good reason. There are lots of things that I have callbacks from my past, things that I learned growing up that I've had to unlearn because I've started saying, like, repeating them and then going, oh, hang on a minute. I've never actually looked into this. Is this true? No. But I think in general, you don't always have that thought. I think the fact that I've found out that I've been wrong a lot of times, I now don't have the same level of confidence that I used to in the things that I used to think I know. So I'm more willing to go, on the back foot and go, hang on, I need to verify this because this is what I've heard, but I don't know if it's true. But most people probably haven't had that. And when you're in circles of people where there is a bit of a circle jerk going on and everyone's saying the same thing, you don't get that same opportunity to allow yourself to reassess this information that may or may not be erroneous. Here we go. Kimo says, sometimes it may be wise to dust off our dispositional beliefs and actively reflect on them again. Yes. Couldn't agree more.
Funnily enough, we did a stream on that a while ago because this is one of the things that I promote Cartesian skepticism for. Not the whole Cartesian skepticism thing, but his methodological doubt. I think too many skeptics go into skepticism and skip doing that part. They skip the going through their old beliefs and those beliefs that are just part of their attitudes, and just take on new beliefs instead without even examining them either. So yeah, I absolutely agree. I try to do it at least a couple of times a year. I try to do it on the fly, but I also try to a couple of times a year sit down and reflect on the things I've learned and the things I think, and yeah.
And it can be hard, I guess, because sometimes you're left going, I really don't know, but I still believe this way. I don't feel as justified in that belief as I used to. I still have some good reasons, but I don't think all of them are as strong as they were before.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I've got a lot of beliefs which I'm just barely tipped over that point. There's other things I think are really good, but there's just a few things that tip me over something else. Not having super solid justifications isn't too bad. It's what you do with those beliefs that then makes them bad or good as well.
Yeah, I suppose if this belief happened to be false rather than true and I acted on it, what would the ramifications be? Would I be hurting people if I acted on this belief and it was false? And if the answer is no, then does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, if you believe that Trauma is not a good horror studio, then, you're wrong, but there's nothing really wrong with that belief. But, there are certain beliefs where you might not have particularly good justifications for them. The enjoyment of a film is one. There's no real rational justifications for that. I enjoyed the film. It made me feel good. I mean, can't say that's a rational justification. That's an emotive justification. But you still believe it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there can be beliefs that aren't particularly well justified, but there's nothing wrong with them. But if you go around and you stab people who don't like Toxic Avenger, well, maybe you're doing something wrong with those beliefs then.
Is that what you've been doing lately?
Not since I was in my 30s.
Command Cyborg says, I've also heard theists in debate type settings saying, aha, you believe in things, you're almost theist. That's interesting. I've not heard a theist actually come down that way. I've heard atheists come along with these sorts of statements, but I've not heard theists say that. Because generally, theists have a slightly better understanding than the average atheist online about what a belief is. Although, obviously, you do get some of the more fundamentalist ones that do everything that they can to try and make atheism a religion because they want to lower it to their level. Like they almost realize that religion isn't as well justified, or at least their particular version. But yes. Reason to Doubt says, evidence not changing people's minds is why I started believing in the power of the bow tie. And you should, because bow ties are cool. Do you have a fez, though? You need to get a fez. Heaven forbid you have to justify a position. Yes. So, yes, we're all good, Crisis. Thank you very much. Lactheus, when someone asks them to justify their lack of belief. Well, yeah, generally they go, well, I don't have to because I just lack belief. And you don't have to justify a lack of belief. When can you justify that? I don't have to.
You don't have to justify not believing something. A rock doesn't believe something, and it doesn't have to justify not believing that thing. Well, you're not a fucking rock.
Thank you, Luke. Seeing as he's here, he's back Monday, apparently. Yeah, he's back. It's going to be a new psych stream. He's going to be doing his Machiavellism, part 3 of the Dark Triad.
Wouldn't it be better if he did it from his front rather than his back?
So Crisis says, I'm agnostic. I like learning and seeing what explanations could be. I don't want to confirm what I can't prove, but I believe in the fact of creation, how matter is neither created or destroyed. That's fair enough. I mean, there's plenty of different ways you can look at it. There's plenty of different ways you can reason through the problem. I think that being agnostic towards the proposition of God's existence is a very sensible place to reside. There was a long time where I was agnostic, and over time I was more and more convinced that first specific gods didn't exist and then no gods existed. Whether that was because I didn't regard certain gods as gods because they were just equating something else to a god, or because I had some specific reasons for that, gods in general and specific gods. But I also don't begrudge someone for being in any other position as well. Again, it's like we were saying earlier, it's what you do with your belief that really matters. So if you're a theist, atheist, agnostic, or any other sort of position, it doesn't really matter as long as you're not hurting others. And any one of those positions could hurt people. Like atheists like to take the moral high ground. I know there are times in conversations where I've taken the moral high ground to a theist. To be fair, they were justifying some pretty awful stuff because of their holy text, but we like to take this moral high ground over theists in general, and that's just not fair. That's just not right. You're tarring everyone with the same brush, and actually most theists, just like most atheists and most other positions, are all right people who would do what they can if they could. This new chat window that I've got is annoying me because it keeps scrolling down. Is there a way to put slow scroll on? That's what I need. I see why. It switched to top chat. So I'm not even seeing the whole chat. Sorry, folks. Cyborg, thank you. He says, I like the stream. I'm generally considered, at least by myself, a pretty cool dude. Perhaps you didn't, so go hit that like. Thank you. We're really bad at doing that sort of thing, so it's nice to have someone else shill for us. Yeah, mindfulness and genuinely looking into information provided is so important. Definitely, especially if it is an important topic or a topic that is important to you. I separate the two there, because something that's important to you might not necessarily be important in the world sense. You know, you might love playing some game. I love Final Fantasy. You might like the lore behind it, for example, and all those things. So you should pay attention if you there. But something like medicine and things like that, you know, the efficacy of a vaccine and things like that, you should definitely spend a lot of time looking into all the information, especially the peer-reviewed studies. But there's no harm in looking into the other side and finding out and looking at the arguments of both sides and finding out certain things that anti-vaxxers are saying and why they're saying. And you can actually find out that a lot of these arguments that anti-vaxxers make are mostly emotional arguments, or, you know, a single bad experience, because I don't think anyone will say every vaccine is 100% safe. In fact, no one does. There's always mild side effects, and sometimes they're stronger. And yeah, it might be something like 0.4% of people who get the MMR can have a fit, and a small percentage of them can have complications from that fit. So there are risks, but it's better than the 1 in 100 chance of dying if you got the measles, you know? And that, you know, you can see someone who knows someone, or they themselves had that bad experience with their child, and they're now telling everybody not to get the measles vaccine or the MMR. They're doing a lot of harm. They haven't actually weighed up the information. They've come from a place of emotion, but you can understand why. I mean, they or someone they know have lost a child, and you can understand why. And this is part of the problem, that from these conversations that is often missing, the understanding of where the other people are coming from. That is so important as well. So not just the information provided, but the people around it. You need that information on top of it. Oh no, Dave thinks morality isn't subjective. My days of thinking it is and numbered. Yes. There are a lot of good arguments for many different positions. We've got lots of different videos on the topic. I'd point you into a few if you like.
Morality is not subjective or objective. It's a fiction.
That is one of many positions that someone can take. But yes. In fact, I've been doing a few morality shorts recently, like less than 60-second videos, just on different meta-ethical positions someone can take, without putting my personal bias in there, hopefully. It can be really hard when you have a position, although I must admit I'm slightly more agnostic towards my position than I was before. Oh no, Icarus, don't start that shit. You can't prove a negative. Crisis has posted a few new music videos that he thinks we'd enjoy. So, folks, make sure you go and check them out and give him a like. Atheist, when he asked them to prove that you can't prove a negative. Oh, don't you start on the atheist rocks as well. What's going on? No. Right. And Luke is going to be 7:30 on Monday. So last time he said 7, it was 7:30. So if you get there around 8 o'clock, he'll probably just be starting. How can you prove that you're not a rock in the Matrix? Anakin, when he tried to take the moral high ground. Brilliant. Okay. The good place is one objectively good thing that exists. Yes.
The good place is evidence that aesthetics are objective.
I got my alleged philosophy knowledge from t-shirts, bumper stickers, and fortune cookies. Do you know what? That's probably still better than half the internet.
It's where I got all mine from. And AP Bio and The Good Place. So it works. Not that I know anything about philosophy, but, you know, it still works.
Now I've caught up on all the chat messages. That was quite a long time. Thank you for all those, though. That was awesome. Where were we? Well, we've had our conversation about what a belief is, the rationality of the belief. If a belief is bad, it's more what you do with that belief, the reasoning that goes into it. So we probably would say that you shouldn't just reject something because it's a belief. In fact, it might be irrational to reject all beliefs. And it's kind of impossible to escape a belief. You know, because even if you're saying that you don't believe something, you're accepting that you don't believe something. So therefore, you are believing you don't believe something. You have a second order belief. Unless you don't believe that you don't believe something. And then, really? So what? What's going on in your mind? The only way you can be in that sort of state is to be a rock. Are you a rock?
Yes. Listen.
See, I'm hollow.
Yeah, I don't have to open my mouth. It's just empty space.
So we've gone over quite a lot of different bits. I know we've veered off course a bit as well, but we can see a lot of the problems in the discussion of belief, and we can understand why some people might find it a dirty word, and why people might be trying to avoid this sort of language. But generally, thinking that all beliefs are irrational, or that you don't hold beliefs, or that beliefs are somehow dirty, is in itself kind of irrational. And there's nothing irrational by default about a belief. Nothing bad by default about a belief. Your reasoning is what makes a belief rational or irrational. And what you do with that belief is what makes the thing bad. It's not the belief itself, it's you and your actions. You could argue that someone has a very negative belief that they should change, but they might not act on it. So even then, yes, you could say that particular belief should probably be changed, but the fact that they're not doing anything with it... And yes, I think we've covered the fact that, just a belief isn't necessarily a religious thing, isn't necessarily tied to religion. So there you go. There's a lot about a belief and how it's not just a dirty word. Is there much more that we can cover on this particular topic?
Well, there's a couple of things. There's people who say science doesn't involve beliefs. There's no beliefs involved in science. Okay, that's kind of faulty, because you have to actually believe the data in order to accept the science. If you don't believe the data, you're not going to accept the science. Some scientist performing some result and performing some experiment, it gives him a very different result than he's expecting. He might, at first kind of apprehension of it, not believe that data and believe that, he's miscalibrated the instruments, he's taken a reading wrong, something is going wrong with the experiment, rather than actually accepting the data and rerun that experiment. But if beliefs weren't involved in science, then they would just accept that data to begin with. So, and accepting evolution, you have somebody like Ken Ham who doesn't believe evolution. Therefore, he doesn't accept the science. So there is elements of belief in science. So that's that one kind of covered. Yeah.
I mean, I think you could say it's fair to say that I mean, science doesn't care what you believe, or the facts don't care about what you believe. That is true, right?
That's true, yeah.
But forming a hypothesis, there's elements of belief in that.
You start with a belief about what causes these things, and you form your hypothesis based around your beliefs. They might be backed up by some previous data, but it's still a belief until you actually get the new data.
Exactly. And even, using the scientific method and the equipment and all of that, you think it's the best methodology to use. You think, this equipment is the right equipment to use. If you think this is X, you think something is true, think something is the case, you believe it. You can't remove the belief from the person, and it's the person that does the science. So, sure, science as an entity doesn't hold beliefs. Science as an entity isn't a living thing. It doesn't hold anything. It's a person that uses the science, the scientific method, and everything, and the way they do it is input output.
And one other thing is you hear a lot of people say, I have no need for the word belief. I don't use the word belief. I use words like think and accept. And it's like, okay, fair enough. You have no need for the word belief because there are other words you can use, but then you're still saying you believe things. You're just refusing to use that particular term because of some prejudice against the term, which would seem to me to be irrational because you're accepting that you have beliefs. You just don't want to be associated with that word. But what's wrong with being associated with the word? The association comes from within your own mind rather than from the actual word itself, because you clearly have no problem with what the word is representing.
Yeah.
You just have a problem with the word.
No, I agree. I think in those circumstances, it doesn't matter if you want to choose your language more carefully. Especially if you're communicating with other people who have a bias against this terminology. If I know I'm speaking to a group of people who hate the word belief, and I want them to accept what I'm saying, then I could choose my language in such a way, and I could even at the end of it and go, by the way, another way I could describe this exact same thing is by saying believe, and throw it in at the end. Once they've listened to the whole thing and taken the time to understand what I'm saying without the barriers going up, because the second you mention the word belief, it could get people's back up and ready for the fight. Theist in disguise. But completely rejecting the word, that's where the problem is. Yes, use a different word. Fine, right? Use a different word. But taking that step into the irrationality of I don't believe, I accept, that's where you're making the contradictory statement. So I agree, the association is in your mind, but it is also in other people's minds. And there is some rationality to avoiding terms that other people are going to.
Yeah, but the rationality of rejecting the word is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any good rational reason to reject the word. It seems to be more of an aesthetic reason. I'm so rational and so reasonable, and I'm so driven by logic that I refuse to use the word belief. Because belief is for religious people. Well, no. Because you're already accepting the idea that belief is for you, it's just you refuse to call it that. It's bad skepticism,
It
basically.
is. Yeah, definitely. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover tonight, Dave?
No, that seems to be pretty good. I think we've gone through quite a lot. What I'd like people to do, essentially, is to be better skeptics. And to, like I say, I can understand when you leave your religion that you're not going to want to be associated with words that feel religious, because you're trying to distance yourself. You're trying to recover from that. I don't know what it's like because I've never been religious and I've never suffered religious trauma. But if you need to do that to help you get over your trauma, that's fine. But I think people should think about being a good skeptic and starting to reclaim that word belief, to get rid of that association and understand that there's nothing wrong with having beliefs. It's not having beliefs that's the problem. It's your justifications for them and what you do with them.
Yeah, definitely. Constantly reassess what you believe.
Exactly, yeah. Go watch our video on Cartesian skepticism.
Or read your article. You've got what was that one called? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Belief, doubts, and justifications, or something like that. Yeah.
But your article on Cartesian skepticism is also good. And for anyone wanting a shorter take on it, it's probably read that article in like 5-10 minutes, and definitely worth doing just to get an idea of a bit more about Cartesians. Wasn't it called Cartesian Skepticism and You? Atheist Cartesian Skepticism.
Oh yeah,
and You?
that's the one. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm like 90 years old. I can't be expected to have a good memory.
I'm just surprised that I remembered something. Thank you, Claire. Great article on beliefs and justifications. She reread it recently. That's probably from the yearly reposts that we've been going through from our articles. Awesome. So, folks, if you don't have any more questions, well, if you do, get them in now. But if you don't, we're going to start wrapping things up. But just to let you know that on Monday, Luke is back at 7:30 GMT. That's 3:30? No, 2:30 Eastern. Yes, 2:30 Eastern United States, Eastern Standard Time, or whatever it is. So he is going to be doing his Machiavellism, and that's part 3 of his Dark Triad series. Sorry, that's my brain going there. So yes, on Monday, Luke is back 7:30 p.m. GMT with his part 3 of the Dark Triad series. He's back after a long hiatus. We also are having Reason to Doubt join us next Thursday, and they are going to be going to tell us, what gave them reason to doubt in the first place and how they got to their current positions. And not to mention, right, there's at least one glorious beard and one amazing bow tie, and hopefully there's going to be a fez soon too. And actually, if you want a little introduction to them, Reason to Doubt at 1 p.m. GMT are doing a throwback of their first ever recording on their channel. So they have said, they've warned us that the recording is awful. But going back to some of our old podcasts and how terrible they sounded, I completely get it. So you'll be able to see what they're like in their old things, but they've also got some newer videos. They've done one quite recently about how, there isn't just one definition of atheism, and a few other great videos that have come out as well. Definitely worth checking out. So if you haven't already, go and like and subscribe to Reason to Doubt, and they will be here with us next Thursday, and I'm really looking forward to it. Hey Craig, nice to have you here. Yes, you did miss it. You've come in right at the end. Sorry. Bloody time zones, hey? But we should be back into our normal routine of a couple of times a week. We're going to be doing our best to do punchy live streams, so not necessarily the sort of 3-hour marathons that we were doing before. Awesome. Well, there's no more questions coming through to the chat. No, awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody who has joined us tonight. It's been really good. Dave, do you have any recommendations on YouTube for anyone to check out on either a recent video or a recent stream that you or we have done, or anything else that you'd suggest someone would check out? Oh, I've lost you, Dave. I pressed the wrong button. I will sort that out. I cut Dave off right at the end there. So, yeah. Just make sure you check out Luke's Dark Triad series. Have a good night, all.